Section 404 of the Clean Water Act protects waters of the United States, including wetlands and streams. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers is the permitting agency for Section 404 permits. Section 401 of the Clean Water Act requires coordination with MDNR on obtaining a water quality certification when an individual 404 permit, or IP, is needed. The Request for Environmental Services provides the Design Division staff the necessary information to obtain approvals and clearances from the Federal Highway Administration and the resource agencies, i.e., Corps of Engineers, Missouri Department of Natural Resources, etc., ensuring project compliance with state and federal regulations, thus preventing project delays. The district will submit an RES at each project development milestone. These project milestones include the location and conceptual stage, preliminary plans stage, right-of-way plans stage, and the final design plan stage. During the location and conceptual plan stage, the environmental specialist screens the project and may also contact resource and regulatory agencies to determine whether they have any project-related concerns. The district initiates this process by submitting an RES to the Design Division. The environmental specialist will relay to the district any findings pertinent to the project via the RES response and through core team participation. Now is the time to request landowner access permissions. At the preliminary plan stage, if no Section 401 or 404 issues have been identified to date, a process similar to that described for the initial project screening is repeated. The district initiates this process by submitting an RES to the Design Division. The environmental specialist screens the project and verifies that no new information has become available since the last screening. Any new findings pertinent to the project will be relayed to the district in the RES response, and the environmental specialist will discuss appropriate actions with the project manager. At this stage, if it has been determined that the project could have an impact via field check on waters of the U.S., the environmental specialist will begin gathering impact information for submittal to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, or COE, and MDNR if necessary, to determine the type of permit that will be necessary. Depending on the project schedule, the extent of the potential impact, the type of permit necessary, the extent of waters of the U.S. impacted, etc., the environmental specialist may begin consultation with the COE at this stage. This can include wetland delineation and stream assessment. The district will need to provide additional information, project plans, and confirm landowner access during the permit process. At the right-of-way plans stage, if no Section 401 or 404 issues have been identified to date, the process described for earlier stages is repeated. The district initiates this process by submitting an RES to the Design Division, whereupon the environmental specialist will screen the project and make sure no new information has become available since the last screening. Any new findings pertinent to the project will be relayed to the district in the RES response, and the environmental specialist will discuss appropriate actions with the project manager. At this stage, the Section 404 permit process should be underway or possibly complete if it has been determined that the project could have an impact on waters of the U.S. The district will be asked to provide additional information about the project during the permit process. District staff may also be asked to respond to COE correspondence, attend meetings, site visits, and help develop or comment on suggested impact minimization through design changes. To fulfill their obligation under the CWA, the COE requires that cultural resources and threatened and endangered resources are also evaluated in the permit process. U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and State Historic Preservation Office clearances are therefore needed to finalize the Section 404 permit. The environmental specialist will keep the district involved throughout the permit process to assure that no commitments are made that cannot be met. At final design stage, if no Section 401 or 404 issues have been identified to date, the process described for earlier stages is repeated. The district submits an RES to the design division, and the environmental specialist screens the project to verify that no new information has become available. Any new findings pertinent to the project are relayed to the district in the RES response, and the environmental specialist will discuss appropriate actions with the project manager. If no Section 401 or 404 issues are identified, the district will be notified that Section 401 or 404 issues are clear for this project. The Section 404 permit process, if needed, should be underway or possibly complete at this stage if it has been determined that the project could have an impact on waters of the U.S. The district will be asked to provide additional information about the project during the permit process. The environmental specialist will keep the district informed of the status of the permit application. Job Special Provisions, or JSPs, may be required to assure that the project adheres to the general conditions and/or special conditions associated with nationwide and individual permits. When special conditions are necessary to minimize or offset a project's impacts, the district works with the environmental section to complete a plan that specifies how such measures will be accomplished and implemented. It is a violation of Section 404 of the CWA for the Federal Highway Administration and MoDOT to place fill material in a water of the U.S. prior to completing the COE permit process. MoDOT should complete the Section 404 permit process before the plans, specifications, and estimates, or PS&E, submission date. MoDOT projects should be screened for wetlands and streams to determine if an on-site wetland and stream delineation is needed. On-site wetland and stream delineations should be completed by a qualified individual who is trained in wetland delineation. Desktop resources include the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service National Wetland Inventory Mapper, U.S. Geological Survey National Hydrography Dataset, and aerial imagery. Wetlands or streams may not be indicated on the National Wetland Inventory or National Hydrography Dataset maps. An aerial review conducted by an experienced individual can identify the need for an on-site visit. Should jurisdictional wetlands or streams be affected by the MoDOT project, a U.S. Army Corps of Engineers permit is required. Minor impacts to streams and wetlands generally fit under a nationwide permit. Larger impacts may require an individual permit. Linear transportation projects are included under Nationwide Permit 14. Monetary compensatory mitigation may be required for either a nationwide permit or an individual permit. Compensatory mitigation is usually required for permanent waters of the United States or WOTUS impacts of 0.10 acre or greater, and for streambed impacts of 0.03 acre or greater if a pre-construction notification is required. For impacts of 0.5 acres or greater, an individual permit is required. The district is responsible for submitting an RES at each project milestone or annually if it has been a year since the last RES was submitted. Timely submittal of an RES is particularly important for Section 404 impacts because planning may be required to obtain wetland or stream mitigation. The district may be asked to provide additional detailed information about the project, if needed, and may need to work with the environmental specialists to investigate measures and design changes that could minimize or eliminate impacts to waters of the U.S. It is important that the district be involved in this process to assure that any suggested changes to the project, like plan changes and writing job special provisions, are feasible for MoDOT. Once an RES is received from the district, MoDOT environmental staff will review the project and provide the district with the following: information about any potential environmental issues, specifying what actions need to occur next in order to resolve these environmental issues, and who needs to perform those actions. The environmental specialist, with the district's help on technical information related to transportation project techniques, will handle all coordination with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and the Missouri Department of Natural Resources, and will obtain any necessary permits from these agencies. The environmental specialist will also conduct any necessary stream impact assessments and wetland delineations and acquiring mitigation needs.